China and going to high school there. So to what extent was the film inspired by your memories of that period in the 1990s?
Lots. This movie is absolutely full of my memories from growing up in not just the 90s but also in the 80s. The amusement park that they go to, it's really hard to find those type of amusement parks in Beijing now. That Soviet-style cinema used to with my parents would actually take me to screenings in sort of those type of Soviet cinemas, and also just the going and watching a movie out in the village. So I used to do that in the early 90s too. And I guess if you want to think about the seed of the movie, it was first time I watched Burt Reynolds in a movie. And actually, I think we mentioned it. I forgot which. It was one of those 1970s movies. It was actually out in a sort of village environment on a badminton court, and badly dubbed. And that was probably the first inspiration for this movie.
I think we had a question down the front here.
Good day. Thanks for the film. Unfortunately, as we know these days, not everything comes out on DVD. So, is there an when we might get it?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure if the movie will come out on DVD now that DVD is sort of becoming increasingly part of history, I suppose. But it will. I think it will be available later on in the year in different types of ways. So it's interesting how, cinema, unlike say reading a book is now on digital platforms and things, but cinema has gone through so many different variations in the last 20 years. We used to watch VHS, and then we had Laserdisc, and then in Asia we had VCD, and then DVD, and now it's all online. So it's sort of the art form has just the way that we watch the art form has changed so much over the years. So I don't know what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years, and who knows?
Virtual reality.
Virtual reality, that's it, yeah.
Can we have another question? I think.
Sam, thank you so much for a fantastic memories of Beijing. I spent 9 years there myself, so I just wanted to ask, you captured just so many things about Beijing. I was just wondering in which of, say, Beijing's salubrious outer suburbs you filmed this thing.
Well, first off, thank you. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the film.
Loved it.
We wished that we could shoot in Beijing, but Beijing has gone under such a transformation over the last 10, 15 years that it no longer has those amusement parks, it no longer has those grand old cinemas. It doesn't look like the Beijing that I grew up in anymore. So we had to go outside.
Or the Beijing I first knew,
Yeah, it's so new now. It's all malls. You go and watch a movie in a mall now. So we had to go outside of Beijing to film these elements.
Where was it?
We went to Yanjiao, which was actually where I was when I was a kid, and also to just a different Zhuozhou. I think we were in Zhuozhou for a while. So yeah, we went to 3 or 4 different places, and also Huairou in the north of Beijing, is where we got the mountainous.
That's what I thought that was. Yes,
yeah. It's a pity. It's Beijing. I guess it's just there's no more of that stuff left. So I have to go look for it in other places.
Thank you so much.
Could I ask a question? Just following on from that, Sam. Was the cinema in the place you were shooting, or did you have to go elsewhere? Because as you said, there's very few of those cinemas left, those kind of grand old socialist palaces. So how did you find that?
Somebody working in our art department had actually scouted it for another project, so it was just pure luck, and it was actually in the middle of the countryside, and it was a factory cinema. So it was originally built in the 60s, and they would show their propaganda movies to 1,000 workers. And it was now deserted, and it's actually in the countryside, so we could only shoot the cinema from one direction, because if we shot it from the sides, you would see sheep and fields. And that's why it's always quite empty outside the cinema in our movie. But yeah, so they were really nice, and they let us, build those movie posters, and it already had that flavour.
It's no longer being used though.
It's not being used, and the interesting thing is the projectionist who used to show movies there back in the day was still living in the cinema, and they let him stay, and he was there with his dog, and he was living, basically he slept in the projectionist room. So he was there to help us about, understand how to put a roll of film in and teach the actor and talk about what it's like to live in a cinema, because that's what our story was about. So it was amazing. So when you see their bedroom and you see the shelves and the library books when they're in the basement, that's actually the real projectionist library books from living in the cinema. It's life imitating art, or vice versa.
Was he in the basement as well?
So yeah, that room isn't actually in a basement, but it's in the cinema. We had to board off the walls to make it look like it. But that is one of the rooms that he lives in.
Sorry, I forgot to say, Sam, I've actually got at home a couple of those comic movies with people's heads at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah, those were inspiration as well, yeah, and subtitles from different movies playing over the movie that you're watching.
Another question?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. That was wonderful. Loved it. There's so much to talk about the film, but I'd also like to ask about the way you got it together. I mean, was this an American film, an Australian film, a Chinese film? I mean, which country was it produced in, and how do you get access into the Chinese market with your film, given that there are some restrictions on how many foreign films can be shown in China?
That's a really good question. We're sort of a bit of an orphan film. So, I took it here to the government bodies here and said, I made a film, and then they looked at it and they said, this isn't actually Australian. This is not an Australian film. It's not Aussie. So then we took it to China and we said, here we go. We've got a film. Sorry, no, it's not Chinese. So it's almost like I guess it's one of the problems with sort of. It's neither fully Chinese or a fully Australian production, but it's also a bit of both. It's a bit. In terms of the distribution, it'll probably take a similar route to our last movie. This is the second movie that the team, the producers, myself, and several different people in the different departments have made before. And that last movie, we basically chose to sell to online. And that was 5 years ago, and we were planning to do the same sort of technique now. It's basically take it on a film festival around the world, and then try to release it simultaneously in the West and in China. And in China, just aim for an online release, which is much easier than, at least in terms of the process of censorship and things, than if you're aiming for a theatrical release.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Hi Sam, how are you? Heard you interviewed on SBS Mandarin, but your Chinese ability is Fei Chang Ha.
No, it's not. No.
That's just a comment. But, my question is, do you know Jeffrey Rush? Have you met him? I noticed he was in this. That's my question off the top of my head. But I noticed he's like a patron of it, so yeah.
Oh, no, I do not know Jeffrey Rush.
Oh, okay. Who is the most famous person you know aside from yourself and the actors in your movie?
Perhaps you want to talk, Sam, a little bit about your acting career in China,
right.
because Sam has also been in quite a few major Chinese productions as the token kind of Westerner,
Yeah.
so, and you've come across a few famous names that way.
Oh, that's true.
When I was living in China, I wanted to make passion movies, and I tried to emulate the John Cassavetes model, which was he would try to work on a movie and then use the income that he'd earned on that movie to shoot a small independent passion project. But some of the movies, I guess, that I worked on was City of Life and Death, which was a war movie. So I worked on Imperial Pieces, lots of TV series. Just things to pay the bills, which was great because I'd get to travel to all different parts of China, to very far away places, and when you're not shooting, you get to travel and explore. But I guess, who's Fan Bingbing? She's probably the most famous person I've worked with.
Not Jeffrey Rush.
Not Jeffrey Rush.
Do we have any more questions from the one at the back?
Yeah, sure. No, it's, the choice of music was actually during the script writing process. I just wanted to make sure that all of the music that was in the movie was stuff that could have been in Big Wong's record collection, in his collection of songs. So it's because he loves soundtracks so much. I had this idea that he would have these mixtapes of just different soundtracks from different movies. So I wanted all the music in the movie, actually except for the modern stuff because we couldn't get the rights, all of the classical pieces, every single piece of music has appeared in different movies in history. And it's what I found really interesting is that my classical music, when I hear classical music, I always associate it with a movie. So even though it's totally different from what the composers planned hundreds of years ago, because of cinema, when I hear a piece, it's suddenly I think, oh, 2001, or I think, another movie. So I wanted to sort of, the soundtrack to sort of just be about how cinema and classical music have actually sort of almost become brother and sister in a way.
Yeah, one more up the back.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. It's a lovely movie. Lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to ask about the budget of this film. Where the source of the money come from, first thing. Second thing is like, do you have to go through a lot of hassle to apply to film in China, and do you need to bribe anyone,
Not sure you can announce that.
The first secret. No, we didn't have to bribe anyone. Sorry, what was the first question? That second question just wipes my memory.
Sorry, the first question is the budget.
Oh, the budget, yes. So we basically, what we wanted to, the producers were Melanie Ansley, who's my wife, and Jane Zhong, who's also worked on Red Light Revolution. We decided we wanted to do a crowdfunding campaign, and we wanted to do it virtually simultaneously, one in China in Chinese, on a Chinese platform, and then one in the West, which we did on Kickstarter. So a lot of the seed investment money, basically to get the whole thing going, was through these crowdfunding campaigns that were virtually film productions in themselves. We spent 6 months of preparation and then so much work, like a month full time doing it. And then once we had those campaigns going, we started to get some corporate investors from China and then one from the UK, and they put in money as well. So basically, this film is. Do we have any crowdfunding? Did anybody contribute to our crowdfunding campaign in the audience? Okay, we got one.
Did you, in terms of shooting the film, did you get like official permits, or did you kind of shoot it under the radar on the outskirts of Beijing?
In China, it's not so much an issue about shooting; it's more about the release. So the control, the censorship, is primarily about you have to get a certain shot, you have to get a certain piece of paper to release in the cinemas, and that's what they're majorly concerned about. We were working with a predominantly Chinese crew in the Chinese language. I think it might have been different if we were, sort of all foreigners and we'd just flown in and we were speaking English. But we were a crew of, say, 80 with 3 foreigners on it. So it was very much a Chinese production when we were on set. So.
Are there any last questions down the front?
Just following on from your first answer, you said online. So for those of us who don't know, and because there's so many different online distribution chains these days, where do we look for it?
Our sales agent is in negotiations with an online entity. When it's announced, actually you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, but it will. We're hoping that we'll be able to be released there.
I think, is your last film still available online?
Yeah, so sure. Yeah, so our last film, which is actually starring the same lead actor and is essentially the same crew, that's available. You can get it straight from our website, pekingpictures.com, or you can. I think it's available on different various platforms such as Amazon and iTunes and things like that. If you're interested, and it's called Red Light Revolution.
Are there any last questions for Sam? One more up here. Make this the last question.
Hi, thanks very much for your film. I just had a question about the father-son relationship. Did you have to do anything specific just to create that dynamic between the two leads? My
wife had a child, and that sort of provided the inspiration for starting to think about father-son relationships. I have a daughter, but it's, you know, it was definitely on my mind. You know, this, you know, feelings of like responsibility and how do you raise a child and making the right choices, and sometimes making the wrong choices for the right reasons. You know, you really want them to do this. And also it really started, you know, as an independent filmmaker, often when you're making films, you're doing it just for yourself. So it's a very selfish thing. And this sort of moving from a very selfish, you know, basically, I see the movie as him going from selfish love, like he loves the kid, he wants the kid to be like him, he just, you know, I just want you to spend time with me, to sort of, to unselfish love, which is, you know, ultimately this arc of what do you want to do? So I think I was going through a lot of that with sort of becoming a new father.
All right, we might let Sam stand down and let the next session come in. So please join me in giving Sam a big round of applause again. Thank you.